I really wanted to share this story because I saw so many people sharing their own personal story, and I saw the story on Instagram Live this morning of Leona Lewis, her story of what happened to her and her dad. Thank you for the hearts and the thumbs of what happened to her and her dad when they went shopping for her new apartment this morning, and it was so sad what happened to her. And I just wanted to come on because I think that there is not one black person that does not have a story about racism and about how it's affected them and how it's wounded them in some particular way. And the thing is, it's very scarring. So I am going to start now and share. But first of all, I won't be reading any comments. I'm just going to come on and I'm just going to share the story, and then I'll pick up any questions or any comments afterwards. Okay, I'll pick up any questions or any comments afterwards. So I'm going to share my story. So first of all, my mum and my dad, most of my parents came over from the Caribbean. My mum came over, mummy told me, what was it? 28th of August, 1960. My dad came over the Easter, 1961, and they came over from the invitation, by an invitation given out to Caribbean people to come over and work. They were invited. Okay, so they came over and they've lived their life, got married, lived their life and everything here. Now in the early 1980s, I went to do my nurse training, and in those days, I think now it's just the nursing degree, and then I think in your third or fourth year you select what you want to specialize in and you go off and do that speciality. Now, in my day, this was the early 1980s, and I'm going to call out the hospital. This is Ipswich Hospital. So all of you that are in Ipswich, you know. So in those days, you had SRN, which was a staff state registered nurse, which was the higher qualification. Thanks, Rowan, which was the higher qualification. And then you had the SEN, which was the state enrolled nurse. Okay. Now I went for the higher one. I got all my GCSEs. I got all of that. That's fine. Got in, got my place and whatever. So I started, I did my first year, second year. I got good grades in everything. All my practicals, thanks Lauren, all my practical exams I done really well. When we had project work to do, I did my project work, I handed in, I passed all of that. That was fantastic. Now, there's two cases of racism that I'm going to talk about. One of them, the first one, was that 1 year, because you would do like a 3-month block on the ward, and then you'd go and do classes for a week. You had to go into class and do your practicals. So we had an orthopedic surgeon who came in, and I think we had about 2 or 3 classes that we had with him, lessons. I think the lessons were about an hour each over the course of a week. And there was about 18 people in my class, something like that. And I was the only black one in my class. And at that time, my stutter was quite pronounced. So I sat in the class, and obviously if you're teaching, you're going to be asking questions from different members of the class. And he would ask a question. Everybody else would put their hand up to answer. He would ignore all of them, and he would point to me and say, I want you to answer. And some of it, I didn't know the answers to the questions. Some of them I did, but because of my stutter and embarrassment, because he kept picking on me all the time, I couldn't get the words out. And each time we had this particular consultant, he would do that to me. He would, if people would put their hand up with the answer, he wouldn't ask them. He would always ask me, and I would sit there and I would be getting hot and my face was sweating, and my other colleagues, I could tell that some of them were embarrassed, and even after the class, some of them were asking me if I'm okay. But I was so embarrassed. This one guy, and the thing is that if I didn't ask her quick enough, he wouldn't proceed with the class, with the lesson, until I'd answered. So I was the one holding up the class because I wasn't answering. Some of the things I didn't even know the answers. And let me tell you, I was so embarrassed. And then, only being the only black one in that class, he would always pick on me. Always. I think we had him about 2 or 3 times. So that was one incident. Bear in mind, with all this, when I would go on wards and we would get feedback from the wards, that the ward would have to fill out, you know, how I did and everything. All my stuff was really good. I remember one staff nurse from a ward, she even requested for me to come back because she said that I was really good nurse. I got really good write-ups from her. The final thing was my final exam. We had the final exam, we had mocks and everything, and I did well on the mock exams. So the first round, I did my mocks, fantastic. I went into the exam at Ipswich Hospital. I went into the exam. I failed the first time. Okay. Most of the people in the class, they passed. So before the because you get 3 chances to do the exam. You get 3 goes. So the first time I failed. So I thought, right, okay. So the second time now, I did a mock exam. We did past exam papers. We did mock exam. I did the mock exams and I would get 75%. Or, yeah, I've got 75%, you know, round about that mark. So that's maybe like a B+ or something. That's a pass. So when they went to grade the mock exam paper, I was told, oh, you know, you've done really well. All you have to do is replicate that in the exam, because my answers were good. I went for the exam the second time. I failed. So I'm like, what's going on? I'm the only black person in the class. So I failed the second time, but I passed the mock. Hi, Ruth. So this is the third and final time now. The third and final time. So I went again and I did the mock exam. After I failed the second time, I went ahead and I studied. I got all my papers out. I studied. Went and did the mock exam. I got about 85%. Went into the exam. I failed. I failed the third time. Then, after everything finished and I was completely distraught. After the third time now, they said to me that I could go and do the lower one, which is the state enrolled nurse, which was the lower one. And I'm calling out Ipswich General Hospital. If you see this video or somebody says that there's a video about you, I'm calling the lot of you out. A few years ago, I was contemplating suing the hospital, but I thought, oh, you know what? I'm not going to bother because I've moved on. Yeah. 3 times I failed. And each time I did a mock exam before the main exam, I'd get 75%. Or I'd get 85%. My grades were good, but I failed. And then on the, they said I can go and do the state enrolled nurse, which I didn't want to do because that was the lower grade. So after that now, I think I got that exam result. I took the exam maybe about 3 or 4 months before I got married. And then I got the result after I came back from my honeymoon that I didn't pass. But anyway, I moved up to London. And the thing is, I came up here. Obviously, that kind of thing, it will affect you because you spend 3 or 4 years investing into getting a nursing qualification and I didn't pass. So I came up to London and I did. So in order to re-establish my confidence, I went to college, and in those days you had GCSEs and all of that. I did law, GCSE, law. I did law. I did law GCSE, And out of a class of about 20, 25 people, I was the best candidate. I always got the top mark. And when I did the law GCSE, I got an A. I got the best grade in the class. When it came time for mock exams with the law, when it came time for us to do project work, when it was answer questions and everything, I got the top grade. I did sociology. Same thing. I got a B in sociology. Same thing. I did well. During my sociology, I met somebody in my class. She said, oh, you could get a job working for BT. Now, the racism ended with that. Now, you see how God is good. I went to work for British Telecom. I'll never forget it. It's what up until now, I don't know what it's like to work in BT now, but right now, BT is one of the best employees because God used that company to reestablish my self-esteem. So when I finished, I went to work for BT. I did really well there. I went to work for the chairman of British Telecom. I worked in his core office of British Telecom. And they had lots of projects going on there. And they asked me to manage a project for a department that had about 1,000 people in it. And I managed that project on behalf of somebody who reported to the chairman. And I managed that project, and this project was other parts of BT were doing it across the UK. And our department was the first to finish it, and I managed that. We were the first to finish it, and I got an award for that. I moved around, went to another department, and I did really well with that. BT asked me that when they had they used to have international clients fly in, had people from Europe, we had people from the States. They would fly in. That particular department, the boss there asked me to draw up itineraries and to represent BT to take these people around different areas of the organization. So I had to, what's the word now? I had to show them around all these different departments and show them the best of BT. They left me to do that. Somebody who I didn't think I failed. They failed me because of racism. And I did really, really well in BT. I was showing around people. They would say, right, we've got a team coming over from the United States and we want you to organize and show them around. We want you to give them tours of different buildings, talk to them about BT. I did that. After that, they sent me out in the community to represent BT. And I would go out to different schools. Okay, Sophia. I went out to different schools. I went to colleges. I went to different organizations and I represented. BT sent me out to represent them. BT sent me out to represent them in the community. And I left there. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people think that what's happening in the United States, it doesn't happen in the UK, and it does, but it's more subtle. And the racism that killed George Floyd, its roots are in the UK. The roots of it are in the UK. Okay? And one thing that I have to say is that the scale of justice has to be balanced. Hi, Michelle. The scales of justice has to be balanced. It's not going to be tipping like that forever. There is going to come a day of reckoning, and those justice scales have to be balanced. And it's already started here in the UK. People are tearing down statues that have been erected and dedicated to these slave traders. The statues are going to come down. They've already torn one down. And now people are, today in Oxford, they're actually protesting Oxford University to bring down a statue of Cecil Rhodes. Okay? So the scales of justice, they are going to balance out. And if you have a story, I would implore you to find some way of sharing it. Because we've had pain for too long, we've had too many injustices, and we have got to find a way to share our story. And this was the only way that I could think of sharing my story. Everybody else in my class, I think bar one person, but I think, yeah, everybody in my class, they passed. About 18 of us, they passed. I was the one that exams, 75%, 85%. I did so well. I've still got one of my projects here that I handwritten. And one of the nurses that was one of the top sisters in the hospital at the time, she asked me to come back and work with her. So that was completely devastating. And I think the powers that be in the Ipswich Nurse Education Centre, I'm sure they must have known what was going on, because how can I get 75, 85% good grades in my mock exam and then I take the exam a week later and I fail? I don't understand that. And I've been determined that the best way that we can begin to fight racism, because even when this thing came out with George Floyd and we were talking about it at work, so many people were dismissive about it. So the best way to fight racism, and this is something that I've already started to do, is to fight with economics. You must buy within your own community. Find out. There's lots of stuff going out online now on social media where you can buy within your own community. And I would really, really encourage you to do that. To buy within your own community. Start with economic power. That's the way you start. You attack it with economic power. Start to buy, start to support black businesses. And in London, there's a lot of it going on here at the moment. We're all looking for places to buy our West Indian food and all of that. And I find a few areas, that I can buy my West Indian food. I am determined to start my personal fight with economic power, because certain shops, certain places will not be seeing my money. And that is, apart from protesting, what I can do every day is support black businesses. And that is actually what's happening in the United States now. And we can do it here. There's loads of businesses online, loads of businesses on Instagram. We need to start to support our own community. Okay, and that's my story. I have gone on now. I got my degree in business management, and then after that I've got a postgraduate degree in school business management, and I went on to be like a school business manager, and I was a school business manager for about 10 years. And I was managing budgets between £2 and £3 million a year. Each year. So over the course of my school business management year, if you add up all the money that I've managed over a course of about 10 years, I've managed about 30 to 40 million pounds. And at one school I was at, it actually, I think all the schools I've been at, when we have had auditors come in, the school has always had the top grade. There was no fault, there was no discrepancies, there was none of that. Everything was A star when the auditors came in. When we had Ofsted come into the schools, because they look at some aspects of finance to do with Ofsted. When they looked at the finance areas that were linked into what they were looking at, everything was first class. Everything was first class. So if you have experienced racism in the past, which all black people have, if there's a black person that said they haven't experienced racism, I don't know. If you're in the West, if you're in Africa, it's a different story. But if you're in Britain, or you're in if you're in Britain, or if you're in the United States, or if you're in Europe, you must have experienced something. But what I want to encourage you with is this: do not let that be your final destination. Because God took me from that within about 3 years. God took me from that pitiful place in that nursing school to work for the chairman's office. For British Telecom, I worked for his office. And this consultant maybe didn't realize that the company that he's paying his BT phone bill to, I'm working for the chairman's office. So don't let your story of racism or what has happened to you hinder you from striving forward. Don't let it hinder you from doing well. Use it. I was determined to use my story as a stepping stone to move forward. I don't even know where that consultant is right now, but he was vile. He was absolutely vile. But God has enabled me I actually kind of forgot about that story a little bit. I kind of buried it because I'd moved on. But once this George Floyd thing kicked off, and I thought, oh my goodness, so it began to surface. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to share this story. So don't let it hinder you from being all that you can be. Keep going, because the scales of justice will eventually balance, and that balancing has started. Anybody else? If you think of anything else later, you can leave it in the comment section, and then I will pick that up later on. But I hope my sharing my story of racism really helped you, and it really ministered to you, and I hope that what I shared really spurred you on to do something, to educate yourself, know what's going on. Don't walk in ignorance. So I'm going to finish up now. If you think of anything later, just drop it in the comments. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. Okay, God bless. And I'm sure that this conversation will continue. Okay, take care.